Everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Rebecca. Today we have Mr. Williams talking on our live chat today. If you are new here, welcome. If you've been here before, you know you can always ask questions during the live chat. Send them to DOC_questions. If you or anyone misses today's live chat or want to go back and review any live chats that we've had in the past, you can always do that. I post that on the front page of DocNet under Executive Director Quarterly Chats. Hi, Mr. Williams. Thanks for taking your time today and joining us.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you? And congratulations on, I don't know if you know, it's the big news of the this week is that Rebecca is moving up to be near the executive team to help Ruth in her job. I'm sure many of you tried to wave her off from taking the job, maybe because she's hanging out with us too much, but no, just joking. Anyhow, congratulations, and we'll welcome here on this floor with open arms. So
thank you so much. Thank you. We have a lot of different questions from various amount of topics today. Let's just jump right in today. Let's see. Try not to jump around too much, but let's do some rapid fire questions real quick. Will the state recognize Juneteenth as an official holiday this year, or do you know?
I don't know that. Rick Tompkins?
Good afternoon. My understanding is it has to be approved by the legislature because it actually has to go in statute. So it should be addressed in this legislative session.
Thanks. Mr. Williams, would you consider bringing back family tours so that staff can have their families come and join us and see where we work?
Wow, that I hadn't even contemplated that issue. Like, I mean, part of the problem has been the pandemic. Like, part of the problem, that is the problem. So I'm unfamiliar with what that was before I got here. I don't know if that was going on when I first got here the first year or not. But I'm wide open to any discussion. Matt, you and Travis have been around. Either one of you want to comment on that? And was there a reason why it was stopped, or because, I mean, out of the gate, it sounds like a great idea, but I'm not sure if there were any other issues associated with it.
I'll see if Matt wants to address it. If not, I will.
We never officially started or stopped tours. Some facilities still do them, some don't. So really, there's interest. I think talk to your appointing authority about doing it, and certainly I'll help facilitate any I can. But we never prohibited or any other way restricted it. It's just been pretty much a warden decision.
I mean, I guess I'd say this, if you're talking about your facilities especially, or I mean, it's a little easier with parole offices at place, but if you're one of those people who would like that and you have an interest in that, yeah, I agree with Matt. Can you just push that up? And honestly, if it was at a prison and you want to have your family come in the afternoon, or I don't know, do it on, I mean, you have to pick some time, right? Not everybody may agree on the time, but I'd be very interested, quite frankly, in attending those. And so, especially if there's family members there. So I'm wide open here. I just think it's one of those things that you're probably going to have to kind of prod us about and find a warden that you can do it at your facility and sort of get a temperature gauge if other people would like that or not at your facility. But I'm open. I'm wide open here.
Right. Thank you. What about ACA? Can we get an update on where the department is concerning ACA? How much money will we be saving, and do we have plans for that money savings?
This is a great question. I'll start answering this question, and then Travis, I might turn it over to you or Matt to talk about a few more of the details and the committee that's working on it and give any update you want to. So for the last year or two, I have, as I've talked about ACA before, I think ACA has done a lot for the state of Colorado DOC, and I think it does a lot for other states as well. There are limitations, though, and I sent us down a road after much debate with the executive team and, quite frankly, a lot of staff who I would see at ACA meetings. I've had this debate with them. I said, hey, you guys, let's just talk off the record. How do you think it's going? And I mean, I know ACA has some pretty good events. They have pretty good trainings. They have some pretty good parties. But what are we getting out of it? And I've talked to ACA leadership, Jim Gondels and others about this issue. And he came and had lunch with me to sort of like talk me back into the fold. And I said, look, I think many states have benefited and we have benefited. But I think we've moved beyond that and we're looking for other avenues. And so what I have set up along with sort of Matt and Travis's and others leadership is really a committee to say what's next, right? What I don't want to lose is sort of the policy development that ACA forces you into, which I think is a very good thing. And I think other states are sorely missing. Like we got that down, right? And so this constant review of policies that I have and the process around that and making sure policies are up to date and making sure we're doing stuff that's really recommended. We can still do that on our own, and I'm still committed to that. So to hear me, this is not a departure from maintaining high standards at all. It's I want to go beyond that, beyond policy standards. What ACA doesn't help you determine whether or not your programs work, doesn't help you determine whether or not your recidivism is going down, doesn't help you reform issues around we're trying to do on work release, we're on Take-Two programs, et cetera. So I'm leaving it up to this committee to give me recommendations, and I'm starting to get some initial recommendations around what that would look like in terms of our data. But I really am having a whole vetting process, and we have time, so we'll have to do this like in 2 or 3 months. This is sort of like been a year-long journey about what we're going to go do. Because, and here's the last note, now Travis, I'll hand it over to you. Is I'm in discussion with other states, some of our sister states in the Western region around this very same issue. And they are very interested as well. And so I won't mention directors' names, but I can tell you some of our Western sister states are very interested in what we're doing because they want to be part of the network. So whatever money we do save out of this effort, I want to reinvest it into staff around, like, I would like staff to visit other locations and audit other prisons, right? I would like those staff or managers from other places to come and audit us. And so I want to develop a network of ability of cross-pollination of states, not just around the policies and things that AC already looks at, but also other practices, right? Work release programs, normalization, some of the cool stuff we're doing around podcasts, the newspaper, the soon-to-be radio station, and have those opportunities for staff to see kind of how each other is running their state systems, because you learn a lot from there. And it also helps you improve your own system. But Travis, what other thoughts do you have about that?
Just a couple other thoughts, and then I'll ask Matt for an update where the committee's at on establishing our own internal audit process. But the intent of stepping away from ACA was never really to save money. And Mr. Williams talked about this. The money that is saved will be reinvested towards a different or improved audit process, so to speak, that will be probably more heavily invested in our staff learning. And then part of that, we are going to have some formal outside national audit of our clinical services operations, because we do see value in that, and the resources that our clinical teams get from being part of a national organization. And we're looking at other organizations outside of ACA to continue that process on the clinical side of things. So we're still in the vetting process there, and it'll be some time before we decide where we land on that. But Matt, do you want to give a quick update of where the committee's at on establishing the new audit process to replace ACA?
Actually, I think I'd like to defer to Deb Goheen on this one, because she's been keeping track of the day-to-day a lot more than I have. So.
Ms. Goheen? I'm not sure if she's on.
Yeah, I'm on. I just trying to get unmuted here. So thanks, Matt, but I'm not really part of the the conversion committee. I know that they're looking at each of the individual expected practices and whether they would be maintained or, find something else differently. And so it's still infant. There hasn't been a lot of progress right now, but they are still looking at that. And Matt, you've got your hand up, so I think you've got more information than I do.
Yeah, and I apologize for that, Deb. It's just I was told that you wanted to update on ACA. I do have something I can share with the group. The committee has already thoroughly reviewed the compliance and standardizations programs in relation to the ACA standards we had in the past. They've broken down and created smaller subcommittees that are reviewing each ACA section from the manual, the ACI manual. It's a large committee. It's made up of a lot of different folks, facility staff, parole, training, legal, pretty much everybody within the department. We have a subsection working in there. So they've made progress in reviewing all the standards and comparing them to what we want to move forward with, but it's still very much a work in progress.
Your audio is just terrible, Matt, but I think we got the gist of it. So thank you for that.
I think we got it. Thanks, everyone. Mr. Williams, let's switch gears a little bit. A couple months ago, we talked about Camp George West. Do you have any updates on Camp George West? Will it be closing? Will it stay open? What happens to the staff that are there?
Travis, would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So we are going to decommission Camp George West as part of the global energy park that the state's developing up on the campus up there. What it's held up on is our inmates are providing food service labor to Colorado State Patrol Academy. And they're similar to us. I mean, they're struggling with staffing, so they can't really shut down their academies until they find an alternative to replace our inmate workers there. My understanding is they received approval to submit a supplemental to hire an outside contractor to provide those services. So that funding would not come around until July, till next fiscal year. So sometime probably between June and August, I would anticipate we will decommission Camp George West, and then we will open Skyline with the same number of beds that are currently at Camp George West. The current staff at CCC, we will have a business plan that's developed through Human Resources and Warden Long at the Denver complex, and staff will be absorbed within the main complex at Denver Women's or Diagnostic Center. As always, when we have these reorganizations, staff are welcome to transfer outside of that location if they choose. But we are not going to force anybody outside of that Denver metro area. We will find a position for every staff member at that facility. And I will stress this emphatically, there will be no layoffs because of this closure. That's always been a concern. So I just want to drive that point home. So yes, it is happening, but it probably won't be until the beginning of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Tranny. I know that was on the top of everyone's minds. I appreciate that you are forthcoming about that. Mr. Williams, over the years, we've been through multiple terms for inmates. Most recently, we are looking at the term resident. Is it out of the scope to just call them people?
It's not out of scope to call them people. But, we this has taken a little bit longer to land on a spot that than I've liked, to be totally frank. But there are reasons why I wanted to approach this carefully, because I hate the term offender, and most of the people in our custody hate the term offender. So I think there's still a need to collectively refer to people as something who are with us. I collectively refer to all of us, as all of you who work here, as our employees or our staff, right? That's sort of a neutral term, right? But we don't have a neutral term for men and women in our custody. And none of them like the term offender. The problem is when we took a survey on this, of course, what they want to be called, they're sort of all over the map. And I suppose that's right. But universally, the one that no one wants to hang on to is offender. So we know that. So I'm going to continue to work this year. We had actually contemplated whether or not this was the year for a statute change, but it would be a multi-100-page bill to do that. We're also making a change on statutory language around correctional industries. So part of the change process, you guys, I actually think about this stuff and I get counsel on it, is how fast we move on particular changes. So I don't put up 10 things we want to change and then we get 5 and then the other 5 die, right? So part of it is with the capacity for us to change, but also the public support around some of these changes and making sure I'm getting the right public support around them so we don't do something crazy. And so I think it'd be better just to call them by their name, to be quite frank. But I probably think there's a term that we will need to call. And by the way, there's some other states, I've mentioned this before, who have come up with titles like that are a little bit awkward, I think. I mean, I think North Dakota calls them residents. Oregon calls them adults in custody, right? It's like, to refer to that group. And so I don't know if there's a magical one. Whatever one we land on, I'm sure there's going to be some that aren't going to be happy with it. But I know but I know changing the term offender is one that generally people in our custody, as well as most staff, I think, can live with, to say, you know what, that's just a very old term. And it doesn't diminish, by the way, the victimization that many of them have caused others at all. Doesn't change any of their responsibility or any of the issues that they should deal with in terms of their own head and heart around the victimization they've caused others. Doesn't diminish any of that. But so stay tuned. This is moving a little bit slower than I like, but there's some reasons why it kind of has been.
Why are offenders allowed to move into facilities during COVID outbreak status?
I was going to hand this over to Matt, Travis, but I'm worried a little bit about his audio to cover about how we've approached sort of the different levels and when we've allowed them and when we haven't allowed, and sort of like what's that look like?
Yeah, I can take it. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we had an executive order from the governor's office that allowed us to suspend intake due to COVID. And that order expired, I want to say right around last December, maybe a little further out, January. So we do not have the luxury to stop intake anymore during this pandemic. And bottom line, by not stopping intake, we have to move inmates within the department to make room for that intake. There's a couple facilities or a couple jails in the state that were under a mandate to bring their inmates in within 72 hours of them being sentenced to the Department of Corrections. So we're really under a lot of pressure there to get those folks in. So during this last outbreak, the Omicron variant, we didn't have the luxury to stop intake. So we really tried to minimize the amount of movement that was occurring, but we had to make room for that intake for the jail backlog folks to come in.
Thanks, Mr. Tranny. Mr. Williams, I know you have Ms. Warren here to talk about CI. What does it look like moving forward, and what opportunities will there be for offenders who are losing their job because of this reorganization?
Ms. Warren?
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. So as most people within the department are aware, CI has held a negative cash balance of about between $5 and $7.1 million. And we have really painted ourselves into a corner financially. We are not in many respects, it really inhibits us from being creative, running employment opportunities, innovative, businesses inside the walls with this degree of deficit. And so coming into this job last year, we've looked really closely at every single industry that exists within correctional industries, and asked questions about the financial viability of the industry, of the opportunity to actually meaningfully impact wages within said industry and jobs post-incarceration. And to me, a lot of that involved also meaningful contributions from the Attorney General's office about the limits and the possibilities within a cash enterprise, a TABOR exempt cash enterprise. So what does that mean for our flexibility within that deficit? And the Joint Budget Committee last year, before I started, when we approached them to forgive around $2 million worth of that deficit that we held, we were told, no, we need to learn, really, we need to stand on our own 2 feet. We need to stop the bleeding financially. And so that was a big part of the culmination of a lot of this reorganization that rolled out last week from Tuesday to Friday, and where we spoke with the 31 impacted staff about this, about what this means for said facilities. So I'm just kind of painting a picture before speaking to the actual businesses and new opportunities coming into those facilities. What I said to the impacted staff and what I said to the staff and the incarcerated individuals that were impacted by this is that the facilities where programs are closing and there is no CI footprint there, or there are no Take Two opportunities in those facilities, is that those will be facilities that will be high center for really looking in the years to come of what Take Two opportunities we might be able to bring inside the walls. We're currently working with a procurement firm and writing an RFP for bringing Take Two inside the walls, potentially starting in Buena Vista to start, but how we might iterate that in other facilities where there are not necessarily gate pass eligible incarcerated folks. And so I think that those will be the priority facilities in what new industries come in. But right now, Rebecca, what I would say, and to all DOC staff, is we have to stop the bleeding first, because the moment that we did this and the moment that we threw on the brakes to say we're making this meaningful change, for us, it's really taking a pause to ask more strategic questions than trying to find a quick fix of what can fill that space. And that's going to be our biggest challenge, is asking hard questions of ourselves of what is sustainable, what does the market forecast, what are the jobs available to folks that are returning home, and folks that are LWOP and have indeterminate sentences, what meaningful employment opportunities are available to them. But to kind of take a breath, to stop, I think is going to be our biggest challenge. But those facilities where the employment opportunities, where the programs are closing are going to be our highest priority facilities to ask those questions of what opportunities we can bring back. Mr. Williams.
So I'd say here's the pain point. The pain point is, one, we're $7 million in the hole. The legislature has said, you're not getting any forgiveness on it. What are you going to do about it? Right. And so there's an expectation, not only from them, but I have it internally, me and Jessica and others, to say, we're going to stop bleeding. Programs that have been losing money for CI cannot lose any more money. Like, we're going to start culling them out. And so the pain point is two things. One, the money is one thing, but the really more immediate pain point is having the incarcerated folks who've lost their jobs, right? And what are we going to do in the alternative? And the staff whose jobs are changing, the 30-some staff who are no longer going to be working just recently this last week, who will have a job, by the way. To quote Travis Training, there will be no layoffs if you want a job, but it may not be the same job. The point is, if we didn't do something, if I didn't sort of put the pressure on Jess, I mean, as she came in, because I talked to her about what was facing her, she took this job, someone was going to do it for us or to us. And I wanted to be in control of our own destiny around this. The good news is the opportunities that are there is that we can get other more meaningful jobs for the inmate population, right? The ones who have to sit inside and can't go outside. And of course, we're expanding Take Two greatly. So as we shut down these other things, we have more capacity for other jobs. I'll give you one example that's a high five to Jess and her team is the E470 contract, right? We were paying those ladies, 33 ladies, about $1 an hour or something like that. We tenfold increased their pay, not we, because we went back to the company who was paying that, who's doing that contract, and said, that pay is unacceptable anymore. It's just not acceptable. And I'm willing to let the contract go for somebody else who will come in and do something else with the ladies. And they came back and we negotiated and they counteroffered, and now they're getting paid around $10 and more, but at minimum $10 an hour for those 33 ladies. That's huge, you guys. That's huge. And there are other opportunities we'll have. The problem is we have to stop doing some of the things that got us in this bad place in the first place, right? So we have to stop that. And that's the pain point. And so thank you to everybody, by the way, including wardens or anybody else who's around has been dealing with it, because I know you've all been great. And I think you all understand that we have to stop losing money on these prospects before I have a legislature do something on this front and I lose the entire CI opportunities. I lose the business enterprise. Somebody's just to come in and wipe the whole thing out. And that's what I don't want to happen. Now, no one told me that that's what they're going to do. But part of it is for me reading the tea leaves and getting ahead of this. And I can tell you right now, because we are getting ahead of it and we are studying these other programs, the legislators noticed. So I'm not getting pinged on this very much right now, because then we're on the move. So that's a long way to say these are pain points every time we make a move and we close something down to build capacity for something else. And that's tough, but it's sort of the tough medicine that we need for where we stand.
Well, I think we can all agree this is such a huge topic, and I just wanted to remind staff, if you have any additional questions for Ms. Warren or Mr. Williams, please send them to DOC_questions, and we can still answer as many questions as you have about that. We will be talking about this more in the future. So let's switch gears a little bit, Mr. Williams. Inflation in Colorado is at a 7.9%, but our base rate increase is no more than 3%. What is the state doing to address this, and will pay increases be part of the recruitment retention plan?
Well, I can tell you what I'm doing about it, and I can tell you what every other person on the executive team is doing about it. And I don't get to make all the decisions on this. In fact, I get to make no decision on this. I can provide data, I can provide the facts, I can use every bit of influence I have as a director with people around me, including my boss and including other people. There are competing interests, and so I'm not going to give you a political statement on this or try to dodge. I'm deeply concerned around the loss of staff and the problem we have with recruitment right now. I have been concerned the entire course of the pandemic, and believe me, I'm following the numbers more closely than any of you about what's happening on a week-to-week basis in terms of applications, in terms of loss of staff. And a big part of it is, certainly one part of it is money. And can we pay competitively? I also look very carefully what neighboring states are doing. None of that is lost on me. Like, if you're going hey, I'm going to tell you something about what another state is doing or what the feds are doing, I know what the other states are doing. And I know what the feds are doing. So I can tell you, and I saw a question earlier around the incentives, and I want to address somebody's question, but like why the incentive pay went from $50 to $30. The only reason why I went to $30 was not my decision. That's just how much money we had to play with for the time that I had, right? So I'm looking for every dollar that I can get, either through recovery money and or building a case for why does base pay needs to be increased. I have a boss like all of you do, and so there's competing interest at times, and it doesn't do us any good if I storm off in a huff. Like, it wouldn't do you any good to storm off in a huff probably with your boss and say, well, they don't agree with me, or no one's listening to me. I mean, nobody likes a whiner, but I can tell you that I'm being laser focused on this issue. And I will continue to advocate for wherever I can and do what I can. Rick, did you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you. The other thing we have to keep in mind, we now have a collective bargaining agreement with Colorado Winds, and we are working cooperatively. The state is working cooperatively with Colorado Winds to address compensation issues. Based on the agreement, there are several working groups now that will look at compensation and look at methods and means to make sure that we start having pay equity and resolving pay equity issues so that Colorado becomes an employer of choice.
And I'm meeting with our negotiating team. So as a result of this agreement with the Winds area, we actually got a few staff. I'm meeting with, this week or next week, I think, to talk about objectives for us as a department. So I'll be meeting with our negotiating team, and then somewhere along the line when they actually meet, I'll step in and say hi to the Winds folks as well. But I think this is an important opportunity, and I want to work cooperatively with Winds around mutual interest. And we have a lot of mutual interest here. So I'm hopeful that will be a fruitful process.
DOC is focused on creating a better environment for inmates, but doesn't seem to be focusing on creating a better environment for staff. Are there steps being taken to show support or repair morale for staff just trying to manage in the facilities?
Well, I'll have somebody else jump in, and I get the nature of this question, and I'm really not defensive about it. I mean, I'm really not. I'm just going to say I disagree with a little bit of your context of your question and say that we don't care. There's probably one thing we care about more every day. There's probably one thing in our priority of the executive team that is the number one priority. I mean, I care about the people in our custody and what happens and the responsibility, the legal and moral responsibility we all have with the people who are in our care, in our custody. But the safety of all of you and the well-being of all of you who work here has always been priority one for me, and I know it has been priority one for everybody on the executive team. So sometimes it may not seem that way. Sometimes it may not hear it that way. There's things that go on behind the scenes that I can't talk to you about, or I can't share with you. But I'll just give you one, and then I'll pass it off to Rick or Travis or anybody else who wants to jump in. Or I see Andre, you're on too. Either one of you, any one of you. Part of why I want, in fact, I was just visiting with the Hungarian prison group. There's a delegation from the Hungarian prison group, and they're number two of their system, along with some other of his staff, are here visiting us. And I just spent an hour and a half, couple hours with them, visiting through translators about the importance of, because they're having staffing problems in Hungary, right? And I said, all the efforts we're going around on normalization of prisons is to make life not only get better for the people who are in our custody, but to make life better for the people who work for us. And if you forgot about the first one, try to keep the eye on the second one. So as Hungary, to their credit, is looking around the different states around how to transform their prison system, I said, if we don't make this a better job for people, then they may not want to work here. And what we could get by with in the past, I don't think we can get by with in the future. So the entire point of making prisons more humane is more humane for staff as well. And if we want to attract more people to work here, we have to attract a broader group of people who want to work here. And that's why we have to convince people this is not your grandfather's prison system, right? This is a different way forward. So all I can tell you is that there's a whole bunch of efforts around that, including the Grace Alliance and encouraging wardens to do everything they can to meet with staff whenever possible, and all of us. The reason why, I mean, the pandemic's caused havoc, but try to get in prisons as often as possible. So I can just tell you that's been the number one priority for me since I took the job, and I know it is for the rest of the team as well. And a lot of these normalization efforts around prison is to make things better for all the staff working there. Travis, do you or Andre or anybody else want to jump in? Any other comments?
No, I know Matt's on, and he has better audio, but I'll touch on it for a bit, and then maybe Matt wants to jump in. But I think Mr. Williams nailed it on the head. I've been in the system 28 years, and when I went through the academy, it was very, very clear there were the green guys and the blue guys, and it was a culture of us versus them. And I reflect on my time at CSP in 1993 through 1998 when it was AdSeg, and I'd come there from a medium security facility where you could actually communicate with inmates, and CSP was just a different world. I don't remember a shift where I didn't have my life threatened or be cussed at, or a month that went by when somebody didn't try to assault me. And we would have staff literally on their first day quit and walk out the door because it was that kind of an environment. And that's what we're trying to change. Nobody should have to go into an environment where they're on pins and needles, they're constantly watching their back, they're getting cussed at, they're getting assaulted, they're getting threatened, they're getting their families threatened. I was young and dumb, so it didn't bother me at the time, but I reflect back on that, and nobody should have to work in an environment like that. And you know, Matt and I and Andre and Steve have really talked about this normalization effort, and absolutely we want better outcomes for the inmates and for them to go out and be successful and not come back to us, not have that revolving door. But my gosh, we want something more for staff so they don't have to go in that environment and be in that daily grind, because it burns you out. And I've seen it turn great people bitter, and they leave the department. So more than anything, that's what we're trying to do, is create a culture to where it's respectful between the staff and the inmates, and it's not the us versus them. And there's always going to be that group that we're not going to get to. I'm sorry, there's going to be that 10% that we're just going to have to manage, and there'll be an environment that we can appropriately manage them. But the ones that want to come along with us, why wouldn't we do it? And you know, I was at Ark Valley talking to staff about this a while back, and one of the guys had worked in an incentive unit and was really questioning normalization. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if all of our prisons were like an incentive unit, and you could manage those inmates like that across the whole department? And it was like the light bulb went on. Just keep that in mind. If we could get this department to where it's like an incentive unit in every environment that we're in, and that the inmates manage themselves, they police themselves, we have respectful relationships between staff and inmates, it will be a better place for all. And I guarantee you we're going to have better outcomes at the end of it. So Matt, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Seems pretty hard to follow, Travis. You hit pretty much everything.
I agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Tranny.
Yeah, you're just being nice, Matt. Just being nice.
What specific steps are you taking to retain staff?
Well, we mentioned a couple. One, let's make the place a better place to work so people aren't in fear when they walk in the door. And that's a big one. And if we want different people to work for us, then it has to be a safe place to work. So we covered that one pretty heavily. The other one is pay. And I think that matters. And I'm going to do all I can in the chair that I'm in to advance pay of staff. Again, there's a lot of things I can't talk about around that because it's a process. And I have one seat at the table. But I'm not shy on this issue. I'll just tell you that. So the other thing, and maybe we haven't talked about, is that I continue to I want to find opportunities for where staff can lead on things, right? I want your job to mean more, not just on being at normal, so you're not afraid on every shift you come in. But I hear the stories, and I talk to staff all the time who work 2 or 3 doubles a week. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. I talk to the spouses of staff members who have been hurt in the system, right? Or staff members, I mean, as we were going through COVID, we lost several staff to that. And so, you know, my dream is that, and you know, this is my hope, but I'm not giving it up, is when I ask staff, why do you work here? You say, well, because I think I'm making a difference, right? I mean, that's what I want. I want staff to be in positions where they feel they are making a difference. And I realize that for a lot of our positions, people don't feel that way. I don't blame them for feeling that way. Maybe I don't think I'd feel that way. But I think you have to be honest about where you stand on things before you can make a change. I've always been that way. I hope you see that I think you can take steps to keep people here, because money does matter, by the way, but working conditions matter a lot. And if you look at sort of the research on this, actually money is like 3 or 4. Kind of the first one is you have a good boss, right? And do you have a boss you want to work for? And if that's bad, because I know I've done that. I'm out. I pulled the plug on a couple bosses, right? I was going to someplace else. You know, I had another opportunity. But one of the big motivators is whether or not we are good men or we are good leaders to the people we lead. Are we good managers to our staff? So I can tell you, if I find bad ones and we find bad ones, I do my best to move them on, because they're hurting us. Not they're just hurting, they're hurting the entire department. And so some people, unfortunately, who work for us who have been moved up into positions, maybe shouldn't be bosses. I'll be the first to tell you I've seen that. And I'm strongly work with appointing authorities and my IG's office to make sure if we have bad bosses, we move bad bosses on. Because that's the difference of why people stay. So there's no magic formula, but there's multiple issues around pay, working conditions, leadership, making sure we have the right bosses, and then also trying to stem this destruction around staff working conditions and overtime. And so I don't need anybody else to tell me that we have a serious overtime problem, staff problem. I get it, you guys. I can just tell you that I'm running as fast as I can, along with everybody else here, to figure out what the solutions are. Again, I can only share parts of that with you, but it's the most important thing we're doing on any given day. Is what are we going to do about staffing, and how do we make it a better place for staff to work here?
I have a staff member that has other retention ideas to decrease burnout, such as earning additional months of credit toward retirement, additional vacation time, and other paid leave. So if staff have these types of ideas, where would you suggest they send those to?
Well, since we're going to start this negotiating process with WINS, you can send them up through our side, and there's negotiators on our side, right, who negotiate for the state or for the administration, us, right? And there's also representatives. I know we came out with representatives too that WINS has. So I don't want to speak for WINS at this meeting at all, but I would say I'm guessing they would welcome those things coming to their members who are employee representatives, or I forget the title they use for them. So there's a real opportunity with this WINS negotiation. I think a few months ago, I got sort of a nasty gram about saying, well, WINS, the WINS process is somehow a kerfuffle. I meant the farthest thing from that. What I meant is that through this process now, there's opportunity to really have good discussions around some of these things, around what other incentives might exist, right? That may be related to pay, but maybe not related to pay. But that's the opportunity. So I want to be clear. I'm looking forward to the opportunity around these negotiations with WINS, because, as I said before, we have strong mutual interest on a number of these fronts. So send it through our side, or send it through the WINS representatives as well.
Due to the current staffing shortages, will we be permitted to carry over vacation hours into the next fiscal year?
That's a good question. Rick?
So that question has been presented to the Department of Personnel Administration because that leave balances and accruals are in rule. And so the ability to carry over leave balances, that had to be granted through an executive order. Unfortunately, there is no executive order this year. And so there will not be the ability to carry leave over. So whatever leave balances that you have, you need to ensure, we need to try to make sure that you're able to take the leave and get down to the threshold of the leave balance. There is a provision in the rules that allows for carryover, and that's if the annual leave has been requested and has been denied. And so that is the only offset that allows for leave to be carried over.
If I have an approved,
So Rick, I guess the inside baseball, and it's no skin off our nose, right? So it sounds like one of the inside baseball things, if you really, to put in leave request, if you really are in a facility that really has the inability to grant leave because they're up against it this winter, this spring. I mean, so am I stating that right, Rick?
Yeah, again, the leave has to be requested and it has to be on the books and it has to be denied.
Okay.
thank you. If I have an approved vaccination exemption, do I need to send in anything to get the booster bonus?
No. No, we'll manage and track it just as we did the last time.
All right, that was an easy one. Will employees who are active but retiring prior to May 31st receive the booster incentive?
Rick?
I'm sorry, I had to come back on camera. As far as I know, I would say yes. They would, if they are on the books prior to May 31st, they would receive the booster bucks or incentives.
Mr. Williams, is there any plans to mandate the booster vaccine? And how will you enforce it if you do?
No, there are no plans to mandate the booster as I sit here today. What could change is in the fall or something else, of course, right? That could be in play. Again, that is some of these decisions about mandates are not just made by me, but I can tell you that none of that is in play as we speak now. I think part of it is that sort of the latest surge is going down, and the need for it is different than when we mandated the vaccine, right? Which we were in the throes of some very serious situations. And as I've said before, and again, there's no shaming or no blaming about any of this, but we've lost staff who are unvaccinated, and that weighs heavy on me. And I've been to those funerals, and as well as a lot of the executive team has been. And there's no shaming or blaming. The enemy is the virus, not each other, and not this debate around the vaccine. So I think we need to be careful about that and be compassionate towards each other, even if we disagree around that particular issue. Can I just give one more plug, though? And I know Dr. Mall's on, is that we continue to see better safety and less likely of going to the hospital if you have the booster. You still may get it, by the way, because we see quite a few breakthroughs with the booster. But what we're definitely seeing is less hospitalization and less serious illness. So if you're lucky enough or unlucky enough to get COVID, if you have the vaccine, your 2 shots plus the booster, and you're fully vaccinated, you're probably going to be okay. I mean, you might have a bad cold, but that's a small price to pay than being profoundly ill and being on a ventilator in a hospital and I don't want to attend another staff's funeral around COVID. And that weighs heavy on me. And again, I think we have to approach it with a great deal of compassion and be careful not to blame each other for something that we may think about it differently. But if you haven't gotten the booster and hey, now you get $250 to get it, just get it. And it'll provide additional protection for you and your family. That's the only objective we have. I just want additional protection for you and your family.
What about the mask mandate? Any plans to ease up on it?
Well, it's been a recent discussion. We just had this discussion with CDPHE and CDC. So there'll be some lessening. 24/7 facilities are going to have more discretion to mandate it. And I'm going to move carefully on this because we're seeing a decline. I don't want a mask mandate more than one day than what we need one. But I'm going to listen to Dr. Moll. I'm going to listen to Michelle. I'm going to listen to CDPHE. I'm going to get a lot of input. And when and if I can get us out of a mask mandate, no one will be happier than me, first of all, because I won't have any more questions about it. Just joking. But I don't really particularly like wearing a mask either, but it's just the right thing to do now. So we're staying where we're at right now. But I know the team and Dr. Moll and the clinical team is looking in this every week. And I get recommendations on it every week. And the ICS team, we're still meeting 3 times a week. And so I'll get that out. I'll get that off of us as soon as I get the strong, good counsel that it's okay to do so.
Thanks. Before I move on too far, Mr. Hansen, are you still on? And if you are, can you summarize what you said about ACA one more time? You cut out a little bit and it was kind of hard to hear you, but I think what you had to say was really important. And I'd like to revisit that for a moment if we can. Do you need the question again?
No, because I believe it was just a status update.
Yep.
So we have a multidisciplinary committee that's been working probably about 6 months now. They've thoroughly reviewed all the department's compliance and standardization programs. They've broken down the larger committee into smaller subcommittees to review each ACA section from the ACI manual. The central committee, as I explained, includes sampling from each and every work area and division so we can get full representation in that regard. So essentially, that was the gist of the update. They continue to work through developing our standards and practices that we'll be moving forward with, utilizing those things we valued from ACA, as well as those things we identify as an agency that might not be there in the ACA standards, but that we feel are very important to keeping us on course.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, our time is about running up. It's been a quick hour for us. Any final thoughts?
No, thanks for having us. And yeah, I just want you to know, and if anybody else wants to jump in from the team, they can, that, this has been a difficult 2 years. And something, as I've told many people before, and my brother knows, well, you didn't sign up for this job and dealing with the pandemic, and we're all working and trying to run a prison system or whatever, but we kind of did. I could tell him, I think, we kind of did, because that's who we are, and we stand in the gap when others don't. And these are difficult jobs, but they're also, they're the most meaningful because we're doing the kind of work that is giving people a second chance, right? And we're providing opportunities for mercy and redemption. Some people will take it, some people won't. Some people are still going to scare us when they get out. And as Travis said, there's that group of, I don't know if it's 10% or 20% or whatever it is, we're never going to be able to make a difference with them, and they're just going to be knuckleheads, and that's just what we have to deal with. But you guys, there's so many awesome things that I see every day. I wish you could all be with me. what's happening in Delta around their Take Two program, and meeting with those guys and meeting with the employer, meeting with the city council, right? People who are like, can we have some of your guys to go work for us? And to see these guys square up, look at the Swift guys and go talk to these guys. And I mean, I just see stories and hear stories and I'm like, this is why we're in the job. And some of you may get it at different fronts, but I mean, I see it. I mean, the Swift firefighter guy, how these guys going to start crying, talking about how he was out fighting fires. I forget where he was at this last summer. A little girl came up unsolicited with her mother there, gave this guy a hug. Like this guy was like melted, you know. And the guy telling this story makes me melt when he was telling the story to me, because he's like, I'm a good guy again. I got to be a good guy. And so I'm not Pollyannish, you guys. I've been around a long time, and I know there's a bunch of people who scare the heck out of me too. I mean, look at the job I hold. I mean, the guy who was in my chair 7 years ago, one of the most forward leaders, one of the best leaders in the country, was assassinated, killed by the very guy he was trying to help, by the very individual he was trying to help. And so sometimes we go like, am I making a difference? Are we making a difference? And the answer is, yeah, we are. Sometimes it's hard to figure out. Sometimes the days you're like, am I or not? But each one of us has a place to play in that. And for me, this has never been a job about rank. It's been a job about roles, and everybody has an important role. And I said, if you're working for this department, you're leading something. So I just know that after 2 years of the pandemic and what's happening, it's easy to sort of lose heart a little bit. I've had that happen to me, right? Like, dang, like fishing sounds pretty good right now, like days of it. But I've also know that I've been given an opportunity to do something for the time that I have. And I just want you to know that, you know, thank you will never quite cover it for us and for me. But there's so many of you who are making a difference in other people's lives. Just keep making a difference where you can, and encourage each other, and I guess just keep pushing forward, because I don't know any other way to go about it. I get a lot of calls from a lot of interesting people who have said a lot of nice things about what's happening. I hope my former boss is okay with me really ratting him out a bit. But I got a call recently from my former governor in Alaska, who said, you know, I've been looking at all the stuff you guys are doing and how you've handled the pandemic. And I've told him, well, I said, none of this is perfect, to be honest with you. But he was so encouraging to say, well, you know what we went through in Alaska, and look at you, look at what you're all doing there. So there's a lot of people who deserve a lot of credit for a lot of things going on. I just get to be the director on any given day. And there's just so many of you who are doing so many cool things. And thank you for that. And just be careful. Consider getting the booster for me, would you please? And God bless you. Thanks, Rebecca, for having us, and appreciate this time together.
Thank you so much. Thank you to your executive team as well. We appreciate everybody's time being on today. Have a great day, everyone. See you next time.